You know that moment. You're in a conversation, maybe at work, maybe with friends, maybe across the dinner table, and someone gently, or not so gently, shows you that you got something wrong. A fact, a detail, a conclusion you were sure about. And right there it hits. A hot flush rises in your chest. Your face warms. Your mind starts racing, looking for a way out, a clever spin, a reason you were still somehow right. You feel the pull to defend yourself, to protect the version of you that doesn't make mistakes. Later, when the room is quiet and no one is watching, the regret settles in. You wish you'd simply said, "You're right. I was wrong." We've all been there. Here's the paradox that changes everything. The people who grow the fastest, the ones who become genuinely smarter over time, are the ones who admit they're wrong the soonest and the most often. It feels upside down, doesn't it? We're raised to believe that smart people rarely mess up, or if they do, they hide it well. That certainty equals strength. That changing your mind is a kind of weakness. But look closely at the people who keep getting better long after others level off. The ones who stay curious, who keep surprising themselves and everyone around them. They treat being wrong the way a scientist treats unexpected data, not as a personal attack, not as proof they're less than, just as useful information. This book is not about becoming a doormat. It's not about apologizing for everything or abandoning your convictions. It's not about never having strong opinions. It's about a specific mental skill that high performers quietly practice. The skill of noticing when reality has corrected you and letting that correction land without the usual armor. Treating the moment of being wrong as a gift instead of a threat. Your brain is wired to resist this. It wants to protect your sense of self, your status, the story you've been telling about who you are. That resistance is normal. It's human. But it's also the very thing that keeps most people stuck at the same level of understanding year after year. In the time we spend together, we'll look at why that resistance feels so strong, what the science of learning actually reveals about how the mind updates itself, real stories of thoughtful, capable people who changed their minds in public and became sharper, more trusted, more free because of it, and simple, practical tools you can begin using the very next time that familiar flush rises in your chest. You'll start to notice the difference between defending a position and defending your worth. You'll practice the quiet art of saying, "I see it differently now," without losing face, because you'll understand that face was never the point. By the time you finish listening, something will have shifted. Being wrong will no longer feel like a verdict on your intelligence. It will feel like the fastest route to becoming smarter. You'll walk through the world with a little more ease, a little more curiosity, and a lot more room to grow. You'll be sharper, more respected, and more free. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Ego Trap. Why we fight so hard to be right. Picture this. You're in a meeting. The projector is on. Numbers are on the screen. Someone across the table says quietly, "I think the figure we used last quarter was off." You know the figure. You presented it. You checked it twice. Or at least you thought you did. Your chest tightens. Heat rises behind your eyes. Before the rational part of you can catch up, the words are already out. "Actually, I double-checked that source. I'm pretty sure it's correct. Let's look at the original file." The room goes a little still. Faces turn. You keep talking, adding reasons, citing memory, sounding certain. Inside, something is scrambling. You need to be right. Not just about the number, about the version of you that doesn't make public mistakes. Later, alone at your desk, you open the file. You were wrong. The number was off, and the cost settles in slowly. The awkward silence that followed, the slight cooling in the team's energy, the quiet knowledge that you spent 10 minutes defending a position instead of simply updating it. Maybe it happens online. You post something you're sure about. A clear, calm reply appears with evidence that contradicts you. Instead of pausing, you type a longer answer. You reframe. You dig in. Hours later, the thread is quiet, but the residual heat is still in your body. Or it happens with someone you love. A small disagreement about what was said the night before. You feel the pull to win the point, so you push. The evening thins. Connection cools by a few degrees. That rising tension, that need to win, that lingering cost afterward, that's the ego trap. Here's what it actually is. Your brain does not treat being wrong as simple new information. It treats it as a threat to identity. The story of who you are includes a quiet assumption. I'm the kind of person who gets things right. When reality contradicts that story, the same defensive systems that once protected you from physical danger light up. Heart rate edges higher. Attention narrows. You start scanning for anything that supports the original position and filtering out what doesn't. It's not a character flaw. It's old wiring doing a new job. The brain is trying to keep the self intact. Being right feels like safety. Being wrong feels like a crack in the foundation. So it mobilizes. The trap shows up in 3 common ways. First, doubling down. You dig deeper into the original claim. You add more justifications, more supporting details, more certainty in your voice. The longer you talk, the more committed you become. Even as the evidence against you grows clearer, the position hardens. It feels like strength. At the moment, it is simply momentum. Second, rewriting history. You quietly adjust the past, so the earlier version of you was still mostly correct. I never said it that strongly. What I meant was slightly different. I was speaking more generally. The memory shifts just enough that the correction no longer lands cleanly. It happens so smoothly, you barely notice you're doing it. Third, attacking the messenger. Instead of looking at the information, you look at the person carrying it. Their tone was off. Their motives are questionable. They've been wrong before. If you can reduce their credibility, the correction loses its force. The focus moves from the content to the character of the one who delivered it. These moves feel protective. In the short term, they often work. You leave the conversation with your image mostly intact. You avoid the flush of public error. But the hidden price is real, and it compounds. Relationships take the first hit. People notice when you are more interested in being right than in seeing clearly. Trust frays in small ways. Conversations become careful. The other person starts editing what they share with you because they sense the cost of correcting you. Connection thins. Learning suffers next. Every time you defend instead of update, you keep an outdated map of the world. Reality continues moving. You stay where you were. The gap between your understanding and the actual situation widens quietly. Over months and years, that gap becomes expensive. And there is the quieter exhaustion. Always monitoring. Always calculating how you look. Always ready to protect the image. It costs energy. It costs presence. Over time, it costs the simple pleasure of being surprised by a better idea. You've probably met people who seem almost unnaturally calm when corrected. Someone points out a clear mistake and they pause. They look at the information. They nod. They say something simple like, "You're right. I hadn't seen that." No scramble. No defense. No need to reframe. They are not weaker. They are not less intelligent or less ambitious. They have simply trained a different response. Their sense of self is not welded to being right in every moment. So, when reality updates them, they update with it. The information lands as data instead of attack. And because of that, they keep growing long after others plateau. That calm is not natural for most of us. It is practiced. It is available. The rest of this book is about stepping out of the trap. Not by force, not by shaming the part of you that wants to protect itself, but by understanding the machinery underneath and learning practical ways to work with it. You will see exactly how the threat response fires, why it feels so automatic, and how the same brain that creates the trap can be retrained to treat being wrong as a useful signal instead of danger. The urge to be right is not your enemy. It is an old protector doing its job a little too well in a world that no longer requires that level of defense. Once you see it clearly, you can begin to choose a different path, one that leaves you sharper, more connected, and freer than the constant need to win ever could. Chapter 2. What your brain does when you're wrong. Your brain is a prediction machine. Every moment it is guessing what comes next. The next sound, the next face, the next outcome of a conversation. It builds an internal model of how the world works and constantly checks whether reality matches that model. When the match is good, life feels smooth. You move through the day without friction. But when reality contradicts the prediction, when the data refuses to fit the story, your brain experiences a small internal alarm. A quiet jolt. Something is off. The model needs updating. And for most of us, that update does not feel neutral. It feels uncomfortable. Sometimes, it feels almost threatening. That discomfort has a name: cognitive dissonance. It is the tension that arises when two pieces of information cannot both be true at the same time. You believed one thing. Reality shows you another. The brain does not like holding both. It prefers consistency over accuracy. It would rather keep the old story intact than do the work of rewriting it. Confirmation bias rides alongside this. Once the brain has a preferred version of events, it starts hunting for evidence that supports that version and quietly filtering out anything that challenges it. You are not deliberately lying to yourself. You are simply following an ancient preference. Keep the internal world stable. These mechanisms are not character flaws. They are efficiency tools that evolved in a world where quick certainty often meant survival. In modern life, they still fire, even when the stakes are only a number in a spreadsheet or a wrong turn on the highway. Here is what happens in the body when the alarm sounds. A brief spike of stress hormones moves through your system. Adrenaline edges up. Cortisol follows. Attention narrows. Your focus locks onto the threat, the contradictory information, and away from the wider context. The urge rises to restore the old story as quickly as possible. You feel the pull to explain, to justify, to find the angle that makes the original prediction still true. The whole sequence can last only seconds, yet it shapes what you say next and what you allow yourself to notice. You can see it in ordinary moments. A driver misses a turn. The passenger says gently, "I think we needed to go left back there." The driver feels the internal jolt. Instead of slowing and turning around, the words come out. No, this way is fine. The other road is longer. They keep driving. The streets grow less familiar. The tension in the car rises. Admitting the mistake would require updating the prediction. So, the brain protects the original map a little longer, even as the cost becomes obvious. Or consider a professional who has built a strategy over months. Suddenly, new data arrives that quietly undermines the core assumption. The report is clear. The numbers do not lie. Yet, the first response is rarely open curiosity. It is often a search for reasons the data might be incomplete, the sample skewed, the timing off. The brain works to preserve the earlier prediction because that prediction is tied to competence, to effort already spent, to the identity of someone who gets the big calls right. Parents know a quieter version. Advice that felt solid years ago about sleep, about screens, about how to handle conflict, meets new evidence or a different child. The old guidance no longer fits. Still, the first impulse is often to double down. This is what worked. This is still right. Changing the advice would mean acknowledging that the earlier version was incomplete. The alarm sounds. Consistency feels safer than accuracy. These moments are small. They happen daily. And each time the brain chooses the old story over the new data, a little learning is postponed. Yet, here is the hopeful part. The same mechanisms that create resistance can be retrained. The alarm itself is not the enemy. It is information. It is the brain's way of saying, the model no longer matches reality. Once you learn to recognize that signal for what it is, information, not danger, the emotional charge begins to drop. The stress spike still happens, but it becomes shorter. The narrowing of attention loosens. The urge to restore the old story softens into curiosity about the new one. You do not have to eliminate the prediction machine. You only have to teach it that updating is safe. That being surprised is not the same as being under attack. That consistency is useful, but accuracy is what lets you navigate the actual world. This shift does not require superhuman willpower. It begins with simple noticing. The next time the internal alarm sounds, the flush, the tightening, the sudden need to defend, you can pause long enough to name it. Prediction error. The model is off. That single act of recognition creates a small gap between the automatic response and the choice that follows. Inside that gap, learning becomes possible. The resistance you feel is automatic. That much is clear. It is wired. It is fast. And it is not a permanent sentence. Now that we understand why the pushback feels so immediate and so physical, we can look at the people who learn to work with these same brain mechanisms instead of against them. Chapter 3: How Smart People Actually Think About Being Wrong. Here is a surprising truth. Many of the most respected scientists, entrepreneurs, and leaders treat being wrong as a normal and even desirable part of their process. They do not see a mistaken belief as a stain on their character. They see it as a temporary coordinate on a map that is always being redrawn. Listen to 3 brief stories. First, a historical scientist. In the early 20th century, Albert Einstein introduced a mathematical term called the cosmological constant, so his equations would describe a static universe. When Edwin Hubble's observations later showed the universe was expanding, Einstein publicly called the constant his biggest blunder. He did not hedge. He did not claim the data were incomplete. He simply said he had been wrong. That admission did not diminish his standing. It became part of the legend of a mind willing to let reality correct him. Second, a modern business leader. In 2009, the executives at Domino's Pizza faced a wave of customer criticism. Their product was widely described as bland and cardboard-like. Instead of defending the recipes, the company filmed a national campaign in which leaders looked straight into the camera and said essentially, "You are right. Our pizza has not been good enough." They showed the old product, admitted the failure, and announced a complete overhaul. Sales rose sharply. Trust rose with them. The public response was not scorn. It was relief and renewed loyalty. Third, an everyday professional. A mid-level marketing manager at a mid-sized firm had spent 6 months defending a campaign strategy built on an outdated customer segmentation model. When a junior analyst brought new data that quietly dismantled the model, the manager felt the familiar internal alarm. Instead of doubling down, she paused, studied the numbers, and the next morning told the team, "I was wrong about the segments. We're shifting." The revised campaign outperformed the original projections. Within a year, she was promoted, not despite the correction, but partly because of the speed and clarity with which she made it. 3 different people, 3 different arenas, one common pattern. They separated their identity from their current beliefs. Being wrong about an idea did not mean they were wrong as a person. The self remained intact, while the map was updated. That single separation is the quiet superpower of people who keep getting smarter. This stance often travels under a short phrase: strong opinions, loosely held. In everyday language, it means you hold your present best view firmly enough to act on it. You speak with clarity. You make decisions. You commit resources. At the same time, you hold that view loosely enough that new evidence can pry it open without a fight. The opinion is strong because it is the best available right now. It is loosely held because you already know a better one may arrive tomorrow. The result is faster learning and better decisions. You spend less energy defending the old coordinate and more energy noticing the next useful signal. You update earlier. You course correct sooner. The gap between your internal model and the actual world stays smaller. Over months and years, that smaller gap compounds into noticeably sharper judgment. Many listeners feel a quiet fear at this point. If I admit I'm wrong, people will lose respect for me. The evidence usually points in the opposite direction. When someone of competence and goodwill updates in public, observers do not think less of them. They think more. The admission signals 2 valuable traits at once: the honesty to notice the mismatch and the security to let the mismatch show. People trust the person who can say, "I was wrong," more readily than the person who never seems to be. Respect grows because the behavior is rare and useful. The fear predicts rejection. Reality more often delivers increased credibility. You do not have to become a famous scientist or a corporate executive to practice this. The same separation of identity from belief is available in ordinary rooms and ordinary conversations. The next time the internal alarm sounds, you can experiment with a simple internal sentence. "This is an idea I currently hold. It is not who I am." That small distinction creates room. Inside that room, the update becomes possible without the old sense of personal threat. Chapter 4: Real Transformations. from stubborn to unstoppable. Once people begin treating being wrong as data instead of danger, remarkable changes follow. Not dramatic overnight conversions, but quiet, cumulative shifts that compound into something stronger. The person who used to brace for every correction starts moving through the world with less armor and more accuracy. Relationships deepen. Careers accelerate. Entire groups of people begin solving problems faster because the truth is allowed to surface without a fight. Here are 3 longer stories of that shift. The first is about a relationship. Maya and her business partner had worked together for 7 years. They were skilled, ambitious, and increasingly careful with each other. Small disagreements about strategy would harden into silent standoffs. Maya noticed the pattern first in herself. Whenever her partner questioned a decision, her chest tightened and the familiar defense rose. "I've already thought this through." One afternoon, after another tense exchange about a client proposal, she tried something different. She looked at the numbers again and simply said, "You're right. I overweight the short-term revenue and underweight the relationship risk. Let's rewrite the offer." The room stayed quiet for a moment. Then her partner exhaled and offered a correction of his own from the previous month. Over the next year, they practiced the same move, small, repeated admissions when the data or the other person's perspective proved stronger. The careful distance between them slowly dissolved. Meetings became shorter and more honest. Trust returned, not as a slogan, but as a lived ease. They still disagreed, but they simply stopped treating disagreement as a threat to their standing with each other. The partnership, once brittle, became one of the most productive of their careers. The second story is about a career. Daniel worked in product management at a mid-sized software company. For years, he was known as someone who defended his roadmaps with intensity. When user research contradicted a feature he had championed, he would find reasons the research was limited. Colleagues respected his work ethic, but grew cautious about bringing him new data. Then a major release underperformed. The metrics were unambiguous. In the post-mortem meeting, Daniel felt the old alarm, and this time chose differently. He said, "I was wrong about the core assumption. The data was there earlier, and I filtered it. Here's what I missed, and here's how we correct course." The room did not turn on him. Several people later told him the admission made them trust his judgment more, not less. Over the following 18 months, Daniel became the person others sought out when a plan needed honest reevaluation. He was given larger scope, then a leadership role. The acceleration did not come from never being wrong. It came from becoming known as someone who updated quickly and cleanly. His reputation shifted from strong defender of ideas to reliable navigator of reality. Opportunities followed the new reputation. The third story is about a team. A regional operations group inside a larger company had developed a quiet culture of face-saving. Mistakes were explained away or assigned to external factors. Progress was slow. The new director noticed it within the first month. In her second team meeting, she reviewed a logistics decision that had cost the group 2 weeks of delay. She said, "I approved that plan. I was wrong about the capacity numbers. The delay is on me. Here's the revised approach." No dramatic speech, just a clear ownership of the error. Over the next several months, she repeated the same behavior whenever the evidence warranted it. Slowly, the team began to mirror her. A coordinator admitted a scheduling error without the usual cascade of excuses. An analyst corrected a forecast in real time, instead of waiting for the weekly review. Problem-solving meetings grew shorter. People stopped spending energy protecting their image and started spending it on the actual work. The culture did not become soft. It became faster and more precise. Within a year, the group's key metrics improved enough that other regions began asking what had changed. The answer was simple. Leaders had modeled the sentence, "I was wrong," and the rest of the system followed. 3 different scales. 1 consistent set of results. Deeper trust appears first. When people see that you can update without collapse, they stop editing themselves around you. Information flows more freely. Relationships, whether personal or professional, gain a sturdier foundation. Faster problem-solving follows. Energy that once went into defense is redirected toward diagnosis and adjustment. The gap between noticing a mismatch and correcting it shrinks. Anxiety decreases. The constant low-level monitoring of "how do I look right now" begins to quiet. You no longer need every interaction to confirm your competence. And a different kind of confidence grows. It no longer depends on always being right. It rests on the quieter knowledge that you can meet reality as it is and still remain intact. That confidence is lighter and more durable. A realistic concern still arises for many people. Sometimes you admit you were wrong and nothing positive happens in the moment. The other person does not applaud. The room stays neutral. The short-term reward is missing. That is true. Immediate applause is not guaranteed. Yet, the long-term compound effect still favors the person who updates. Each clean admission deposits a small amount of credibility into an invisible account. Over dozens of interactions, that account grows. People begin to route important information and opportunities toward the person who has shown they can handle correction. The one who never admits error may protect a single moment of image, but they slowly become someone others stop bringing the full truth to. The compound interest of repeated updating is slower to see and far more valuable. Chapter 5. The simple framework for owning your mistakes. Knowing you should admit a mistake is one thing. Knowing how to do it smoothly in the actual moment is another. The internal alarm still fires. The chest still tightens. The old protective scripts still rise. Without a simple method, even the best intentions can collapse into defense or awkward over-apology. What follows is a clear 4-step framework you can use the next time reality corrects you. It is short enough to remember under pressure and flexible enough to fit almost any situation. The first step is to pause and name the feeling. When the brief internal alarm sounds, the flush, the narrowing of attention, the sudden urge to justify, simply notice it and give it a quiet label. That's the prediction error. Or, there's the alarm. You do not have to stop the conversation or announce anything out loud. You only create a small gap between the automatic reaction and the next word you speak. That gap is where choice becomes possible. Picture a conversation with a friend. You assumed they were free on Saturday and planned around it. They say they already have plans. The alarm rises. Instead of immediately explaining why you thought they were available, you pause for one breath and name the feeling to yourself. The charge drops a fraction. You are no longer fully inside the reaction. The second step is to separate the idea from your identity with a simple internal sentence. Something like, "This is a belief I held. It is not who I am." Or, "The map was off. I am still here. The sentence does not need to be elegant. It only needs to remind you that updating an idea does not diminish the person holding it. Once identity is no longer on the line, the emotional intensity softens further. At work, you may have shared an incorrect forecast in a meeting. New numbers arrive that contradict it. The alarm sounds. You pause, name it, then quietly tell yourself, "That forecast was my best read at the time. It is not a verdict on my competence." The separation creates room to look at the actual data without the old defensive heat. The third step is to state the correction cleanly and without over-apologizing or self-attack. You speak the update in plain language. "I was wrong about that," or "The earlier number was off. The updated figure is this." You do not pile on self-criticism. You do not launch into a long explanation of why the mistake was understandable. You simply place the corrected information on the table. Clean ownership is usually enough. In the parenting moment, it might sound like this. You told your child a rule based on an assumption that no longer fits. Later, you realize the assumption was outdated. You say, "I was wrong about that rule. Here's the better version going forward." No dramatic confession. No excessive apology that centers your guilt. Just the clear update. The child hears honesty without the weight of your self-judgment. The fourth step is to extract the useful lesson, out loud if it helps the other people present, or privately if the moment is already complete. You ask yourself, or the group, "What does this show us?" Or, "What will I check next time?" The lesson turns the correction into forward motion. It signals that the goal was never to avoid being wrong. The goal was to keep the map improving. In the forecast example, it might sound like, "I was wrong about the projection. The updated number is X. Next time I'll weigh the leading indicator more heavily." In the conversation with the friend, "I assumed you were free. I was wrong. I'll check with you first next time." The lesson is brief, practical, and oriented toward the future. Taken together, the 4 steps form a repeatable sequence. Pause and name. Separate the idea from identity. State the correction cleanly. Extract the lesson. You can move through them in under a minute once they become familiar. Here is what the whole framework can sound like in real speech. In a team meeting, "I need to correct something. I was wrong about the timeline I shared yesterday. The realistic date is 2 weeks later. Next time, I'll confirm capacity before I commit." In a conversation with a partner, "You're right. I was wrong about what you said last night. I filled in a story that wasn't accurate. I'll listen more carefully." In a parenting moment, "I got that wrong. The earlier rule doesn't fit anymore. Here's the updated one, and I'll check in with you when things change." Notice the absence of self-attack. Notice the absence of long justifications. The correction is clean, the identity remains intact, and the lesson points forward. 3 common sticking points still arise for most people. The first is the fear of looking weak. The framework itself is the counter. Clean ownership without collapse tends to read as strength, not weakness. People register the security it takes to update in public. The fear predicts loss of standing. Experience more often delivers the opposite. The second is the urge to explain too much. Once you begin speaking, the old protective habit wants to add context, history, and reasons the mistake was understandable. The framework asks you to stop after the clean statement and the brief lesson. Extra explanation usually reintroduces defense. Less is clearer. The third is the temptation to wait for the perfect moment. You tell yourself you will own the mistake later, when the timing is better, when you have the right words, when the other person is in a good mood. The perfect moment rarely arrives. The framework is designed for the imperfect present. Use it while the information is still fresh. Waiting usually increases the internal cost. Practice will make the sequence feel more natural. The first few times may still carry some awkwardness. That is expected. Each repetition trains the prediction machine to treat the alarm as information rather than danger. Over time, the pause becomes shorter, the separation becomes automatic, and the clean statement becomes the default. Once this framework becomes habit, the benefits begin to multiply across every area of life. Relationships grow more honest. Decisions track reality more closely. The quiet background anxiety of image protection starts to fade. In the final chapter, we will look at how these gains compound, how a single practice skill of owning your mistakes can reshape the way you work, relate, and move through the world with greater freedom and sharper judgment. Chapter 6: The Ripple Effects. Smarter decisions, stronger bonds, greater freedom. When admitting you are wrong becomes normal, everything starts to change. Not in a single dramatic moment. In quiet, accumulating ways. The same situations that once triggered defense begin to feel different. Conversations open. Information arrives earlier. The background tension of protecting an image slowly loosens its grip. What was once a rare, effortful act becomes a natural part of how you move through the day. And from that shift, major ripple effects begin to spread. The first is decision quality. When you stop defending outdated information, your choices track reality more closely. You no longer spend precious time and energy protecting a position that no longer fits. The map updates sooner, so the next step is taken from a clearer place. Picture a manager reviewing a project plan that is already 2 weeks behind. In the old pattern, the first instinct would be to explain why the original timeline was reasonable, why external factors intervened, why the team still deserves the benefit of the doubt. Now, the manager pauses, names the alarm, separates the idea from identity, and says, "I was wrong about the capacity we had. The realistic delivery is 3 weeks later. Let's adjust the client communication today." The decision that follows is cleaner. Resources are reallocated while there is still time. A costly surprise is avoided. The quality of the choice rose, simply because the outdated information was no longer being defended. The second ripple is in relationships. People begin to feel safe telling you the truth. When they have seen you update without collapse, they stop editing themselves around you. Feedback arrives earlier and more honestly. Connection deepens, because the other person no longer has to calculate the emotional cost of correcting you. Imagine a quiet evening conversation with a partner. Something small has been bothering them for days. A tone you used, an assumption you made. In the past, they might have stayed silent or raised the issue with careful packaging. Now, they simply say it. You feel the familiar internal alarm. Move through the 4 steps and reply, "You're right. I was off there. I see it." The air in the room changes. They relax. The next truth comes more easily. Over weeks and months, the relationship accumulates these small moments of safety. Trust is no longer a fragile thing that must be protected from correction. It becomes the ground that makes correction possible. The third effect is learning speed. Feedback is no longer filtered through ego, so it reaches you intact. You notice the useful signals sooner. You adjust sooner. Skills and understanding compound faster, because less energy is spent resisting the information that would improve them. Consider a professional learning a new system at work. Early attempts produce errors. In the old pattern, each correction would trigger a quiet internal defense. Reasons the interface is poorly designed. Reasons the training was incomplete. Now, the corrections land as data. I was wrong about that sequence. The efficient path is this. The next attempt incorporates the lesson immediately. Within a few weeks, the learning curve that once felt steep has flattened. Progress that used to take months begins to appear in weeks. The acceleration did not come from greater talent. It came from removing the filter that once slowed every update. The fourth ripple is personal freedom. Your self-worth is no longer chained to being right. The constant low-level monitoring of image begins to quiet. You move through conversations and decisions with a lighter internal posture. The need to win every point loses its urgency. What remains is a quieter confidence that can meet new information without threat. You notice it in ordinary moments. A friend points out an inconsistency in a story you told. The old flush still appears, but it is shorter. You name it, separate it, correct it, and keep talking. No residual heat follows you into the next hour. Or you leave a meeting in which your recommendation was revised by better data. Instead of replaying the exchange and reconstructing your defense, you simply carry the updated view forward. The mental space once occupied by image protection is now available for actual thinking, actual listening, actual presence. That space is freedom. These four effects do not arrive all at once, or in perfect sequence. They grow unevenly, the way real change usually does. Some days, the practice feels natural. Other days, the old habits reappear with surprising force. You will still feel the alarm. You will still catch yourself mid-sentence, reaching for the familiar justification. That is not failure. That is the prediction machine doing what it has always done. The difference now is that you notice. You recover faster. The gap between the automatic reaction and the chosen response keeps shrinking. Each recovery deposits a little more evidence that updating is safe. Over time, the recoveries themselves become less frequent and less costly. The tools are now in your hands. You understand why the resistance feels automatic. You have seen how smart people treat being wrong as data. You have a simple four-step framework you can use in the actual moment. The only remaining question is whether you will begin using them today. Not perfectly, not in every conversation, just in the next one where the internal alarm sounds. Pause, name it, separate the idea from who you are. State the correction cleanly, extract the lesson. Then notice what shifts in the room, in the relationship, and inside your own chest. The cumulative effect is already waiting. It begins with the next small choice to let reality in.